So today we're going to talk about tracking the ROI history of our assets, and how we can do that and how we can analyze that. So I'm going to go straight away to step number 2, where we have a list of all our assets here. Along with this, there is a column for ROI. And in the listed ROI for each of the assets, you would see a graph icon along with it. Now, this graph icon is basically going to take you to the tracking history of this particular asset. So if I click on this particular icon for the first asset, which is mutual funds equity, I would see two different charts. The first chart is basically a gauge chart or a speedo chart, which shows me the current ROI, 13.06 in this case. Along with it, very important information is whether your current ROI is in the green, amber, or red zone. A green zone here indicates that you are safely placed as far as returns from this asset are concerned. An amber zone would tell you that you got to keep a watch that it should not fall further below. And red would tell you that you need an immediate discussion with your financial advisor. So this is very, very important, and this is going to be different for different types of assets. So this is for equity mutual fund, but for a different kind of asset like a fixed deposit or a real estate or bond, you might see different kind of red, amber, and green zones, and accordingly you've got to take a decision whether it needs a discussion with your financial advisor or it needs to be watched or it is fine. Now, along with this chart, you see another chart, which is basically a trend chart, which shows you the history of this particular asset's ROI. For example, in this case, in April 2022, the ROI for this asset, mutual funds equity, was 9.83. And in June 2022, it became 13.06. Now, the system is basically smart enough to understand when to capture the ROI. There are no fixed intervals like every month or every week. But it's going to be smart enough to understand when it is worth capturing the ROI and displaying it in a graph. You don't have to worry about that, of course. You got to keep tracking your ROI the way you have been doing it as of date. So these two charts are going to really help you understand about the assets returns and whether you need a discussion with your financial advisor. Same way for you will have different charts for different types of assets. For example, for the second asset, you would see that the red, amber, and green zones are very, very different because this is a different kind of asset. And of course, you don't have a trend chart here because you only have one data point right now. Again, the system is smart enough to understand how many data points to capture and how to realign the graph according to the number of data points that you have. Now, not only at the asset level, you could basically drill down at the sub-asset level and try to see these graphs. For example, for this mutual fund equity, I have these three sub-assets. And if I look at the first sub-asset, which is Axis Flexi Cap Fund, I see this kind of a chart, which basically tells me, again, a different kind of red, amber, and green. And it shows me where this particular ROI stands as of date. And accordingly, the trend chart will display here as the number of data points increase. Now, not only at the asset and sub-asset level, you would also be look at this particular charts at the portfolio level if you go to step 4. So right now I'm at step 4 and looking at portfolio trend analytics, going to ROI trend, and this is the trend of my portfolio, how the ROIs have changed over a period of time. Again, with the smartness of the system, it'll know when to capture it. And again, the green, amber, and red would be very, very different for the portfolio because, again, the targets for each individual would be very, very different depending on their risk profile, etc. So try to read all these graphs together and make conclusions out of it, analyze them, discuss it with your advisor, and try to improve the ROI. Happy tracking!